Welcome to Wales Tech Week 2021. Thank you to our partners. Enjoy the session.
Croeso a Bardar. Welcome to the green stage of the Wales Tech Week. I don't know where you are. I'm sitting in Barry Island. The sun is shining, the sea is glistening, and already people are starting to come to the beach with their bucket and spades. But more important than that, we've got some excellent presenters. They're going to talk about the circular economy and how Wales is leading the way. My name is Brian Mayne. I'm the chairperson of the Chartered Institution of Waste Management, the leading professional membership body for people working in or with the resource and waste management sector. I'm delighted to be invited to share this morning's session. What is the circular economy and how Wales is leading the way? As I truly believe that technology has incalculable potential to usher into existence a truly inclusive circular economy faster and more effectively. So the session will look at how technology in Wales is helping us to transition from the present linear economy, which is where raw materials are collected, transformed into products, used briefly, and then sadly thrown away, to a circular economy where one that keeps the products and materials we use in use for as long as we can, utilizes as much as we can from them while in use, and recovers, repairs, and reuses them once they've been used. It is an economic approach that can assist our ambitions to tackle the climate crisis. So the session will include a variety of presentations followed by a QA session. Please ask as many questions as you like. Just type them into the comments box, which is found on your webinar dashboard. And don't forget, just ask them as you think of them throughout the session. And I'll get the speakers to answer as many as we have time for at the end. So our first speaker is Dr. Andy Rees, OBE, Head of Waste Strategy at the Welsh Government. Now, Andy has 41 years experience, or looking at him, you would never guess, of experience of working in the environmental field, including spending the last 25 years in the area of waste strategy. He was awarded an OBE for services to the environment and recycling in Wales in the New Year's Honours List in 2019. Andy will set the scene. He will provide a brief overview of Beyond Recycling, which is Wales' circular economy strategy, and explain how technology is an important and the sort of programs that are being used to fund and support to enable Welsh businesses and social enterprises to lead the way on tech. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Andy, who will set the scene for today's session. Thank you, Andy.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Brian. I just wait for my presentation to be loaded up. So fingers crossed that it works okay. As Brian said, I'm going to give an overview of our new circular economy strategy, Beyond Recycling, and really show how Welsh Government policies are going to drive a circular economy and particularly harness the benefits of tech and technology in its broadest sense. Next slide, please. Just to remind everyone that, of course, we are governed by the 7 Wellbeing Goals under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act for Wales. All of the 7 goals are, of course, of equal importance, but I just highlight the A Prosperous Wales, which requires us to work towards a low-carbon society, and we must also use resources efficiently. And it's beholden on all parts of Welsh Government and all of the public sector in Wales to apply those principles and drive towards low carbon and using resources efficiently, as well as all the other requirements of that goal and the other goals. And then, although we've left the European Union, we still have a number of really important international obligations, and really important amongst those are the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Again, all are equal, but just highlighting Goal 12 on responsible consumption and production, and the various targets that are, and requirements associated with that, which we have to meet alongside all other member states. Next slide, please. Carbon is really important in everything that we do. And just to highlight that the technology that we need to support a circular economy needs to make sure that it itself doesn't generate scope 1, scope 2 or scope 3 emissions where at all possible. And in particular, scope 3 emissions, an area of real strong importance in terms of resource efficiency. So that is in terms of the raw materials used and processed and manufactured that go into the products that we use, and then of course the end of life carbon emissions associated with the waste of those products. So we need everyone, and including all government supported programs, to tackle all of these 3 emissions. Next slide, please. We've set out to do a whole load of things within government, and we've managed to embed circular economy in all of these really important documents, including natural resources policy, the economic action plan, the new programme for government, manufacturing action plan released a few months ago, planning policy Wales, and then really importantly, the procurement policy statement also has a lot on the circular economy. And requires everyone to do what is necessary to deliver resource efficiency. Next slide, please. So we published in March our new circular economy strategy, Beyond Recycling, deliberately focusing on beyond recycling, so that we do far more waste prevention, reuse, remanufacture, repair, and of course there's a lot of technological solutions within that. So our strategic objectives have been set out. We have the net zero carbon Wales by 2050 target, and we have to make a 63% reduction in emissions by 2030. So there is an awful lot to do over this next decade. We've set a goal of using only our fair share of the Earth's resources by 2050. So that's 1 planet resource use. And I think we use between, I think it's 2.5 to 2.8 planets worth at the moment. So there is a lot to do to achieve that target. We've also set a zero waste target for 2050, which essentially means no residual waste, i.e. 100% recycling. So we will have no need for energy from waste, for example, by 2050. So we wish to see that phased out by then. So we want to transition to a more circular economy. I think there are at least 140 academic definitions of a circular economy, but we want to keep it simple. Basically, a circular economy to us is where we keep resources in use for as long as possible and avoid or eliminate waste as part of our journey towards achieving those goals of 1 planet resource use and 0 carbon. Next slide, please. Just to quickly explain that graphically, on the left there is where we kind of are at the moment. The thick circles reflect the 3 planets worth of resources. Very short, small circle, so we use things very quickly and then throw them away. Far too much goes to landfill and energy recovery, and we use far too many raw materials there at the top. We want to move to a slimmer sort of flow of resources there, where the arrow is deliberately thinner, using only 1 planet's worth of resources, and the circle is deliberately longer. So we want to keep those resources in use for as long as possible, and essentially eliminate waste to landfill and eliminate the leakage of waste to energy recovery, which at the end of the day is destroying natural materials and also releasing fossil fuel carbon into the atmosphere. So we want to eliminate that by 2050. And as you can see, use far fewer raw materials and essentially sort of dematerialize our economy. Technology has a key role to play in all of that. Next slide, please. Beyond Recycling has 6 key themes, 6 core themes: driving innovation and materials use, upscaling prevention and reuse, building on our recycling record. We're already number 3 in the world on household waste recycling. We want to get to number 1. Investing in infrastructure, technology key there, of course. And then the softer people side of things, that is probably the most important side of all of this, enabling community and business action to achieve resource efficiency. And then, of course, we need to align relevant government levers. And I'll give some examples of some of the actions against some of these core themes in a minute. So next slide, please. So In terms of the core theme of driving innovation and materials use, I've just given some examples of some of the actions here with a sort of technology sort of bias, rather than I haven't got time to cover all of them. So in public sector construction, we want to prioritise the use of sustainable and low carbon materials. So increase the use of timber, for example, and increasing recycled content, and making sure that we reduce the embedded carbon footprint of the materials that go into construction. On the right there is an example of University of Wales Trinity St David building in SA1 in Swansea. Those are recycled glass architectural panels in place there, and the light shines through them. They're a fantastic creative use of a natural material, i.e. glass, which is being recycled. We want to build on experience of foundational economy, and get all public sector bodies to follow a sustainable materials procurement hierarchy, which Bettina might mention a bit later. And again, focusing on low carbon and recycled content products procured by the public sector. So that goes beyond construction. And we want to find high quality end uses and markets for the recyclate that we collect from households and from businesses. And on the lower right there is another example of a small company based in Crofty on Gower, Smile Plastics, who make really jazzy, iconic designed furniture and other panels made out of high quality recycled plastic. And they have won awards for their products. I think somebody is speaking later there. Also on food, the food and bioeconomy side of things, we want to valorize any wastes that are produced to get maximum value out of those waste materials. And there's definitely a lot more that can be done there. Next slide, please. We want to focus on some of the key materials, particularly used in manufacturing in Wales. So again, Bettina may cover this, but we have asked RAP to produce route maps on plastic fibre and wood. We have very strong industries in Wales using plastic, fibre and wood-based products. So we are very keen to get as much of the recyclate collected back into those products. And of course, that involves some pretty good technological solutions. So hopefully Bettina will cover that. And we want to support innovation more broadly in terms of all of the products that are manufactured in Wales. So Gwion hopefully will cover that in his presentation. Also on the right there, example from Swansea Museum is a car made out of wood. Obviously there are some metal components in it, but I'm told that it does actually work. So there's an example of using low carbon material. Next slide, please. I said we want to build on our recycling record. We want to become #1 in the world, but that is all about using that valuable resource that we collect from households and businesses and turning it into something useful within Wales, creating jobs and also helping with resource efficiency and environment and social issues, and maximising the benefit of all of that effort for Wales PLC. Next slide, please. In terms of investing in infrastructure, on the left there is RAP's plastic industry mapping tool. Apology, Bettina, if I've stolen a lot of your thunder here. Identifying the major plastic manufacturing plants in Wales. The whole range of different products are manufactured out of plastic, and also identifying the sources of waste plastic, particularly reprocessors, and trying to increase the recycled content. We need more infrastructure to recycle plastic bags, for example, there in the middle, using Perth plastic recycling facility type example that I showed there on the right that I think was from Italy that I saw a few years back. Importantly, we also need infrastructure for waste prevention. So there is an example of a jazzy water refill station that our previous minister opened up in North Wales Way a few months ago. And there's slightly lower tech in terms of refill bags. Those are mine that my wife bought me for my birthday to take to our local zero waste shop, which I fill with pumpkin seeds and nuts, etc. for my breakfast. So there's all sorts of levels of tech here, but really important tech it is. Next slide, please. Lots on enabling business action within the strategy. We're working through Business Wales and Food and Drink Wales to support new technological solutions and good ways of doing things. And also RAP have got the Circular Economy Fund to increase recycled content in manufacturing. And there are some examples there of just some screen grabs that I managed to take quickly of projects that have been funded there. Next slide, please. Really important, as government, we have devolved powers that we've had since 1999 to bring in primary and secondary legislation. We also have powers over the landfill disposals tax. We're going to introduce new regulations to require the separation of recyclables at source at non-domestic premises. That will generate a lot more high quality recyclate that can be used beneficially by our manufacturers. Public sector procurement, RAP have produced a lot of guidance there. I mentioned that earlier. And then really importantly, the new Environment Bill, sorry, that should be 2021 now, will give us a lot of new powers on extended producer responsibility, deposit return scheme, and then really importantly, product environmental standards and product environmental labelling, and mandating waste tracking, another technological solution electronically, of course, digitally. Next slide, please. And then finally, just some examples of some initiatives that we've supported over the last year or so. The Innovative Housing Programme and Modern Methods of Construction are adopting a circular economy approach. So we're working closely with our housing colleagues there, working to whole life net zero carbon. So the embedded carbon will be looked at very critically there. As I mentioned, RAP are working on the various route maps for us. We Make a Space, which I think has been covered a bit later, within Cardiff University, is a fantastic new sort of innovation lab for technological and other solutions to resource efficiency and circular economy. We funded Refill Cymru, Repair Cafe Wales, Fair Share and other organisations on the waste prevention side of things. We've provided over, I think it's £40 million over the last year to fund various circular economy related projects in town centres and with the public sector and with businesses. We're also funding low carbon and low emission waste collection vehicles. A number of those now are being used throughout Wales. And just another example that we as a department haven't funded, but the Welsh Government have, as far as I know, is the AMRC in Flintshire, and they've got a project on sustainable food packaging. And of course, there are a lot of other initiatives, a number of which that you'll hear either in this session or later. Next slide, please. And finally, a bit of a trite comment, but it's true. Wales is very active in technological solutions for a circular economy. We have our universities very active in this space, and we have the Circular Economy Research and Innovation Group, which is a network of all of the academics in Wales working on circular economy. So we have a lot more that we need to do, but a lot in place already. Thank you for listening, and I really look forward to hearing the other presentations and taking part in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Just one question, talking around the issues around waste. And one thing that we've seen, certainly over the last few years, is this dramatic increase in electronic waste that's been generated. I've got some figures here, some global waste statistics. And then when you look at the amount of e-waste that is collected and recycled, it doesn't seem a great deal. So on the one hand, you know, we're supporting the development of new technologies, but this as the unintended consequence of generating more waste. What is happening in Wales around e-waste?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Brian. We're working with DEFRA and the other administrations on revising the waste electronic and electrical equipment regulations to drive far more recycling, reuse, repair and waste prevention. Our business recycling regulations will require small WEEE to be separated out and collected for recycling. And we also need to look at what more can be done to collect small WEEE from households. Obviously, there's a cost implication there, but that's where extended producer responsibility should come in to help fund that. And then really importantly, we need to mine those critical raw materials within Wales, ideally, that are contained within that electronic waste, rather than sending it abroad and losing those valuable critical raw materials. Swansea, where I'm lucky to live, has, of course, a huge historical legacy as a metal refining area, and some of that expertise still exists. So let's build on that and try and extract those critical raw materials within Wales, and then use them to make new batteries, perhaps on the nickel side of things. So the lithium-ion battery side is also an area that we need to focus on as well. Yeah, so big potential there. And we have a strong electronics industry, of course, in Wales. So there's still a lot more to do on that. You're right, Brian.
Thank you very much, Andy, for that presentation. So we now move to our next speaker, which is Dr. Gwion Williams, who's a Senior Innovation Manager at the Welsh Government, who leads the £18 million SMART Innovation Programme, which provides advice and guidance for Welsh businesses in innovation, research and development, and commercialisation. Gwion, in his presentation, will provide an outline of the role of the SMART programme and how they support Welsh businesses to develop new products and processes to support the circular economy. So over to you, Gwion.
Diolch, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Bardar, good morning. So I'm Gwion Williams, Senior Innovation Manager for the Welsh Government, and I've got 5 minutes really to canter through the Welsh SMART programmes to explain how we work on a practical level with Welsh businesses to support the circular economy. Next slide, please. So what is the SMART? What is the SMART programme? SMART is really split into 3 main projects. So SMART Innovation, which is practical advice and guidance for Welsh businesses, primarily SMEs. We support over, current figure is over 2,000 companies have gone through the SMART Innovation Support Programme. And through that programme, we've got a team of specialists, innovation advisors that are based regionally throughout Wales and provide a wide range of support in the area of new product development, R&D, and adoption of new technologies. Historically, we've always been strong in particular industrial sectors. The team are also trained in intellectual property, but I probably would say is over the last probably five years plus really, the importance of the circular economy has again become mainstream and part of our work. So the specialists that we have within the team are really much so focused on the circular economy and the benefits, and of course the business benefits of being involved in that area. I probably should say at the end of this presentation there is a link actually which gives further information about all the programs and also contact details for the regional specialists so that you may contact them. Second then, there is the SMART Cymru programme, which people normally associate with SMART because SMART has always been a brand that's known throughout the UK for funding innovation and R&D. So within Wales, we've got a different sort of structure to the SMART Cymru programme. We'd like to say that we cover more aspects through a wide range of new aspects that we've introduced to SMART, which includes innovation vouchers and the traditional longer term R&D projects. So on the next slide, I'll give you further information about the sort of interventions that's involved in terms of the finance for companies seeking to develop new products and processes. The third element of the SMART then is SMART Expertise, and it ties in nicely really with Andy's comments. SMART Expertise is all about getting industry to work with academia. I think we've found, certainly in the area of the circular economy and decarbonisation, we've got good universities in Wales that have got a lot to offer. Andy referred to a few examples there, some of the stuff Swansea University, AMRC working on food packaging, the centre in Bangor and Aberystwyth on the biocomposites and on the new materials. So I think we've got a wealth of expertise within Welsh academia, and the purpose of SMART Expertise is to bring that out and to translate that technology over to support SMEs. So next slide, please. So in terms of what we do within the SMART programs, well, essentially the important part is the specialists. So a team of specialists, pan Wales, that work with businesses to support the development of new products and processes. Again, we mentioned that in the past, we maybe have focused in specific areas of technologies and maybe is not being so mainstream to look at the circular economy. But I'd say now that every project that we work on does cover that aspect. We've also got a team of manufacturing and design specialists. That's a separate contract that's there for a specific undertaking of work to support industry. And again, it ties in very nicely with the comments that Andy made in terms of looking at design new product development, it shouldn't be a case of looking at circular economy once you've developed a new product. It's from the start. So we very much encourage the building of aspects of the circular economy into the onset of projects at the beginning. Next slide, please. This is a bit of an information overload. It's there just for reference, really, because there is a link at the end of this presentation that gives all the intervention rates, all the details. But I had to include it just to make, just to convey the message, really, that we have got in Wales, fortunately, through the SMART programmes backed by European funding, healthy levels of support for innovation, R&D development, and also the intervention rates are quite attractive as well. So scrolling down this table, you'll see that yes, we support projects starting from feasibility stage right up to pre-production. Intervention rates generally starting high intervention rates for high technical risk projects. That would then reduce then for projects that are closer to market where the technical risk is less. But I guess all I'm trying to say from this slide is that yes, there's a lot of support out there. The current programme is live until 2023. Specifically looking at circular economy and decarbonisation activities, we've put themed calls out in that area. We put 2 calls out last year looking at decarbonisation within industry. That also encompassed the circular economy. But I'd say by now it's embedded within what we do within these programs. So it's a fundamental part of any smart R&D project that we consider these aspects. So the chances are, I imagine, there wouldn't be another call, maybe not in the next 12 months at least, because the work around the circular economy is embedded in what we do. Next slide, please. Again, I canter through the slide which duplicates really what Andy covered earlier, which is our responsibility under the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act and the 7 goals. We've been aligning our programs with the Wellbeing Future Generations for over 4 or 5 years now, and it's again, it's a fundamental part of what we do. And again, building on Andy's comments there, related to a prosperous Wales, we need to make sure that our companies are fit for the future, and there is, products being developed that are suitable for a modern, low carbon economy. So I won't dwell on the Wellbeing Future Generations, although it is in our links and it does explain how our projects align with the Wellbeing Future Generations and the importance of it. But I guess for the benefit of this presentation, it's important to note that all our processes, the appraisal of projects, looking at what we support, we do look at scoring projects against the Wellbeing of Future Generations to ensure that we do align with the goals. Next slide, please. Again, conscious of the time, it's only 5 minutes, but again, it ties in nicely with some of Andy's comments again, some of the case studies that have been through the innovation support programs. I think Andy did refer to Techlin as a project that has been through the SMART programs. That's a company that developed silicon release paper. And of course, the importance of making sure that's not just used once and thrown away. The development work undertaken by Techlin means that their paper is now used over 10 times. Frog bikes is another one here. I think they've been fortunate to benefit from quite a lot of PR recently, but it's another project that we supported through SMART from the onset, really, and they're regarded as a brand of bikes that does really thrive based on the circular economy. So our support in particular has looked at product development related to ensuring that the components can be reused and remanufactured. They've also taken on an approach where they work with retailers to ensure their products are reused. So it's a good example. We have got case studies on our website. I think that's on the link that's on the final page. So certainly, if you're interested, take a look at that. Paint 360 is another good case study where we've worked with local authorities throughout Wales to collect paint that would otherwise go direct to landfill. I think our figures to date is that we have got over 1,600 tonnes of paint that's now redeveloped and doesn't go into landfill, and is indeed being purchased by various organisations within Wales, such as schools, housing associations, and I think there's other organisations that actually use their paint rather than direct landfill. So a nice case study. I say we've got a number of them. These three stand out. We've also got others involving academia and the benefits that they bring. So yeah, certainly I'd encourage you to have a look at the final page. If you go to the next slide, please. The links here detailing the SMART programs with further case studies and a wealth of information. What I would encourage is have a look at the page for the innovation advisors, because they're there. The service is free, and they're keen to work with Welsh industry. Thanks very much. Diolch.
Thank you very much, Gwion. I have my own story about recycling or reusing paint. Is that many years ago I established a repaint store, and I was privileged to go and have a look at their stock. And 3 months before, we decorated our living room, and my wife allowed me to choose the colour, which was from a big company, and it was called Irish Moss. And I turned up at our repaint store in the Vale of Glamorgan only to find shelves and shelves of Irish moss. So it was quite a choice. My wife hasn't forgiven me for that. But I do have a question for you, Gwion. And that, at what stage does an entrepreneur need to seek support if they've got an idea? And a rather tricky question: have you had a Beatles moment? You know, where someone has come, like the guy from Decca, with a brilliant idea, you thought, that's never going to work. You don't have to tell us if it is, but so that's the light-hearted question. But at what stage?
I guess to answer your first question, Brian, we are part of the Business Wales ecosystem. So, in terms of developing new ideas, we're part of a system that is part of the whole Welsh business support. So in terms of innovation support, there's no doubt that a comprehensive business plan is always beneficial. Our team focus on the innovation and the technology side. So we certainly encourage the companies to make sure that they have got a comprehensive business plan before they embark on working with us on a technology project. So I guess once there's a business plan in place, Brian, that's the answer. To be honest, I'd say 80% of our work is with companies that are trading companies that have been trading for years. So most of those will have, comprehensive plans that are required by standard investors, by the banks and so forth. So, I'd say that if you haven't got a business plan, that's something that certainly we need just as a starting point, really. And your second point there, have we? Yeah, I'm sure we would have. It's. I remember when I first started as an innovation specialist. It was 20 years ago. And we had a chap in it was actually in North Wales, Osborne Jones, who you may know. Osborne set up DPC, who actually became Euro DPC and were required by Siemens, and he was sort of seen as the guy to go to within the innovation scene, and he worked closely with the innovation specialists when we started. And I think Osborne's first comment was, you can never really prejudge. So I think that's something that we always take into account, in terms of before saying no. You should at least do your feasibility study and look at the market opportunities, the technical challenges, and the finances, and with that, hopefully glean some information that shows, what you have got, whether it is viable or not. But I guess, if you're looking at, on a wider scene, the Welsh story, and it's well documented, isn't it, that it was Dyson that obviously did seek support from UK government. This is in the very, very early days, when nobody really believed that it was possible to have a bagless Hoover.
Yes.
So that was maybe one, not just for Wales, but for the UK as a whole, that nobody really thought that what he had was transformational, but I think it was.
So I thank you very much, Gwion, for that answer and responding to perhaps wasn't that frivolous a question, because you're quite right. I guess basically what we're saying, if you have an idea, seek support and give it some thought, and with luck it can be nurtured and be part of the sort of technical revolution that we want to see in Wales that supports the circular economy. So thank you very much for your presentation, answering a couple of those questions, Gwion. Our next speaker is Bettina Gilbert, who's the Programme Manager at SMART Cymru. Bettina leads the organisation's work with businesses in the electricals, the textiles, plastics, resource management, food and drink, hospitality, and public sector. So a lot going on there, Bettina. Bettina will provide an overview of the types of technology that are needed to drive a circular economy and provide some food for thought for us as she focuses on what RAP is doing in this area. So Bettina, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. And I'm pleased to have this opportunity to speak at this event today. I thought it would be really useful just to give a little bit of an introduction to who RAP is. This is an audience we don't always talk to. So RAP is a leading environmental not-for-profit organization, and we work with business, governments, and citizens to develop a circular economy. In Wales, our work is funded by the Welsh Government, and we're now working around the globe across 6 continents and 32 countries. So RAP's focus is really on food, plastics, and clothing. And what's unique about RAP is we use a systemic approach for working across supply chains to make sure that if we're intervening in one area, it's not having any kind of unintended consequences in other areas of the supply chain. And how we work is we have 5 main, what we call RAP products that we employ. So these are policy and insights, where we work with business and governments to undertake research and provide policy support. We work with businesses to deliver technical support to drive change. We have grants and investments through, financial instruments is one of our products, and voluntary agreements. And so voluntary agreements are collaborative agreements whereby members across the value chain agree to collective targets, and then they report progress annually. And our 5th kind of product that we use is citizen behavior change, where we lead and develop and deliver behavior change campaigns. So hopefully in Wales, a great example of this is the Be Mighty recycling campaign, that hopefully if you've been in Wales in the past year, you've seen that campaign. And, what have we achieved so far? Well, some examples of RAP's work. Andy already mentioned that RAP is the 3rd best nation for recycling in the world. RAP has had a big part in that through our collaborative change program, and the team here in Wales working with local authorities to really, deliver high quality recycling in Wales. Our UK Plastics Pact, which is one of our voluntary agreements, has reduced problematic or unnecessary packaging sold in the UK by 40% since 2018. And we've also done a huge amount to reduce food waste. Our core told commitment has helped the UK waste 27% less food and save 5.3 million tons of carbon emissions year on year. So that's just an example of some of the impact of our work, how we work and what we do. So in December 2020, RAP launched our new 5-year business plan, our plan for a sustainable planet. This sets out how we're going to work and what our priorities are. For a circular economy, we're really focusing on reuse, designing products to be 100% recyclable, increasing recycling, and driving demand for circular materials and products. And I'll talk about some of that work. And also investing in the infrastructure and the technology needed to deliver all of this. So before I go on to RAP's work, I thought it would be, a good idea just to look at what technologies are really driving the circular economy. I spend a lot of my time thinking about this as a program manager when I'm designing programs. And so I've got an example here from the Dutch National Bank, ING, and multinational bank, I should say. So they published some research back in 2015, looking at the types of financing needed to drive a circular economy and where investment should be focused. And ING reported that the main technologies necessary to drive a circular economy were the mobile internet, the Internet of Things and big data, advanced and smart materials, so looking at regenerative materials that extend product life cycles, improve maintenance, and foster circularity. Renewable energy, which is one of the underlying principles of the circular economy, that while we're doing all this great work to reduce environmental impacts, we're not using, fossil-based fuels. And then energy storage, because of course, it's not always windy or sunny. So there we go. And I guess more recently, the Working Group Finance in 2016, it was the following year. So Working Group Finance was led by the EU, I believe, but it was a collaboration between a number of multinational banks. They added to this list artificial intelligence, robotics, 3D printing, supply chain platforms, and also blockchain technologies. And so I thought I'd just use this to give us a little bit of food for thought and perhaps stimulate debate about if we agree with these technologies, that they're the ones that underlie the circular economy, and also if there's any gaps in funding or R&D that we need to do here in Wales to really promote the use of these technologies to drive the circular economy. And over recent years, I would say we've definitely seen significant growth in the use of these technologies to enable reuse, for example, through sharing platforms and food redistribution, through citizen behavior change. We've seen technologies come up for the gamification of recycling that's being used with businesses and, for example, with universities to encourage students to recycle. We've also seen great increase of technology with regards to waste management, the growth in smart waste collections, technologies for planning waste collections, and also onboard technologies and ERP, enterprise resource planning. We've seen even smart infrastructure in cities for collections now. We've seen the use of technology in sorting of waste, and in food waste valorization, which Andy mentioned earlier, turning waste into really high value products. So not just animal feed, but high value products like sorbitol, and really valorizing those waste products. So moving on to what RAF is doing in this area, I thought I'd highlight kind of 3 good examples. And this is just some of the work that we're doing. Now, again, Andy mentioned our Circular Economy Fund. And here we're really investing in capital equipment and infrastructure to help businesses increase their reuse of recycled materials or reused or remanufactured materials and finished products. And many of the projects that we're funding are actually using technologies that are beyond normal industry practice. So they're very innovative in order to drive demand for recycled materials. And of course, we're also seeing the economic benefits of this, the growth in turnover and jobs amongst these organizations, along with the environmental benefits such as reducing carbon emissions or avoiding carbon emissions. So an excellent example from the Circular Economy Fund is Heathpack. So Heathpack is based in Caerphilly, and they manufacture packaging for use in the food and horticultural sectors. And we funded them so they can use recycled content in this packaging. And what they're doing, one way that they're doing in this is they've invested in robotics. And so this has increased the efficiency of their production, but also allowed them to produce at a higher rate and therefore using more recycled materials. I don't have a picture of it. I do have a film of robotics, but for safety reasons, they're behind cages, robotics, and it's very difficult to, I couldn't really capture a still. And so the picture here is of Smile Plastics that Andy mentioned earlier. So another thing that we're doing is we're looking at, through our technical support, so that was a little bit about our financial products. For our technical support, we are delivering 4 demonstration projects to really increase confidence in using recycled materials and products. These 4 projects, we're working with 20 plus partners from across the supply chain. And this picture here, for example, is of some, hopefully you recognize them, cups from Costa Coffee. So we're using those cups in construction products. And we're also focusing on household products. We're looking at construction materials, other construction materials. We're looking at medical products, and also at, what's our third one? Yes, hazardous waste. Not necessarily hazardous waste, but the containers for transporting hazardous materials. We're trialing the use of recycled content in all those products. Now, I wanted to draw your attention to a project that's led by RSS. And this project is working with Resilient Sustainable Solutions. They're working with Carrillo Plastics based in Bridgend, Green Edge Applications, and Cardiff University Schools of Business and Engineering. And what we're doing is they're trialing the use of recycled content in mortar tubs used on construction sites. And what we're doing is we're using technology to tag those mortar tubs and enable reverse logistics, so we can recover them off-site and then recycle them and use that recycled content in new tubs. And we've also already tested and successfully tested the use of 75% up to 100% recycled content in those mortar tubs. So the technology is enabling those reverse logistics. And then the third trial I just wanted to mention was using technology in our consumer behavior change. So RAP are partners in a pilot of an at-home digital deposit return scheme pilot in Conwy. And this is to trial an approach to DRS, digital return systems that enable the use of existing recycling infrastructure or curbside collections rather than solely relying on traditional return to the retailer scheme. So to put this in kind of layman's terms, RAP has great recycling at home. Rather than a householder having to bring their drinks to a retailer and use the deposit return scheme there to get their money back, what we're doing is we're using an app. We're trialing an app so they can scan the app, immediately get their money back for that bottle, and just still place it in their household recycling. So that's quite an exciting trial that we're doing with 550 households in Conwy in partnership with Conwy Council, Polytag, the Welsh Government, and Princess Gate, who supplied the bottles of water to be used in the trial. So hopefully that gives you an example of some of the work that we're doing at RAP Cymru. Andy's mentioned some of our other projects. There's information, which I'm quite happy to talk about if there's any questions or if people want to contact me directly. And information about all these projects are available on our website. I've included some links in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bettina. One thing that interests me is that there's some fantastic support going on by RAP, but how do you ensure, you mentioned very early on the issue around unintended consequences. So how do you ensure that some of these projects that you're supporting and are being delivered, they all sound fantastic, but how do you make sure that they are delivering exactly what we do want, and somewhere in the background they're not causing us problems in the future? It'll be a question I want to ask the panel, but I just thought it was relevant really for the presentation.
Yeah, so I guess RAP, that is really underlies the ethos of how we work as an organization. We work collaboratively. So those supply chain demonstration projects, for example, the reason why we have 4 projects and 20 partners is that we're actually working across the supply chain, so we can identify those kind of maybe tensions between different parts of the supply chain and how to address those. And certainly our voluntary agreements work that way. So, I guess a good example that was used in a presentation by one of my colleagues yesterday is do we really want to, for example, drive the use of biodegradable plastics when we're also looking at household collections, and how do we stop those products from becoming a contaminant in household collections? And through our voluntary agreements and our collaborative way of working in the Plastics Pact, we have all the members from across the supply chain working together and talking together about how to address these problems. So everybody is represented, and it's quite unique because often these people are either in competition or they don't talk to each other, right? Because they're just different parts of the supply chain. The way we work gets everybody in the room together. So it's a really kind of systemic approach.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Bettina. Much appreciate your response. Moving on from Bettina, our next speaker is Dr. Anthony Soroka, who's the Senior Project Officer based at Cardiff Business School. Anthony's presentation will look at some of the work Cardiff University is doing on logistics and circular economy supply chains, focusing mainly on plastics within the construction sector, but also looking at other aspects of the circular supply chain, such as more sustainable logistics solutions. So Anthony, over to you, please.
Thank you very much. And as you can see from the slide I've got there, We've done work with a lot of funding agencies, including RAP in particular, and we'll be discussing some of the work that we're doing with RAP, but also the research councils and the Welsh Government and the European Regional Development Fund. So the first project I'm going to be discussing is plastics in the construction sector, which Bettina did a fantastic introduction and summary of. So I can sort of avoid that and go into the more sort of technical details of what we're looking at in the business school side of things. And that's basically looking at the logistics and the supply chains of what is basically Carrillo Plastics supply chain and what's actually going on. So what we did, we sat down with the company, put our heads together, and just tried to get a picture of what's going on at the start of the project. So what we've got is the traditional route of using virgin powder, taking it from the raw material manufacturers, Carrillo Plastics, take it in and produce about 80% of their tubs using 100% virgin material. But also what happens is they have things like offcuts and the like from their molding process, which can actually be recycled. So they're already doing some recycling. So they take that, they take it to their processor, that goes in to their factory, just north of Bridgend, and they produce 50% recycled mortar tubs. And we're looking at trying to actually increase the usage of recycled mortar tubs, but also to get more recycled content in. And Bettina mentioned how we've gone up to sort of effectively 100% recycled material tubs in our trials. That it's basically recycled plastic and some impact modifier to help strengthen things. So what happens? Carrillo Plastics, they make their tubs and they go off to a variety of places, from mortar companies that supply them as part of their package to building companies, to wholesalers, to house builders, to general builders. And it's a variety of sizes of companies. You've got your very small SME, micro SME builder who'll be buying these tubs from a wholesaler and perhaps going from site to site using them. Then you'll have your big red row homes, Persimmon and the likes, who'll be buying these sort of in bulk effectively for building projects that they use. So it's a wide variety of companies that actually buy these products. So they go to the construction site, and what happens? Well, they're used, and then we've got what we call the good, the bad, and the ugly at the bottom right-hand corner. So on the left-hand side, you can see the good tubs, fairly straightforward to recycle. They've been properly looked after, they've been cleaned. Then you've got the bad. Yeah, these aren't too good. They can probably be cleaned up. And then you got the ugly, which is caked with mortar, cement, concrete, whatever it might be, that would just potentially destroy machines if they were actually put into the processing system. So basically, it's possible to sort of maybe extract some of these ugly tubs, but you could be looking at using things like acids and whatever. So you want to avoid that. So it's, we've got to sort of encourage people to sort of look after their tubs as well. But it is possible, even without using harmful chemicals, to process most of the tubs. And we decided to sort of have a chat to some of the people in the supply chain, to do interviews with them, to gain their perspective on what's actually going on with recycled tubs. Are people interested in recycled tubs? What happened to the tubs? So one of the things that we found was that there's a poor perception. A lot of companies thought, well, recycled tubs, they're just not as good as virgin material tubs. So we've obviously got something to do there to change people's minds as to the quality of the tubs. And in testing, we found the recycled content tubs to be just as good as the virgin material tubs. But what we also found is that a lot of these tubs just enter the general waste stream one way or another. They could be chopped up and placed into a skip. Some companies actually use them as little mini skips that the waste management company picks up at the end of a contract. And house builders often just treat them as consumable, that they buy enough for one project, they buy any more that they need to because of damage or usage, whereas your smaller builders will tend to take it from site to site and actually get rid of it right at the end of its life. Now, that's basically the diagram that you saw before, and we started looking at the different circular economy routes that could happen. So first of all, is customer reuse. Customer just reuses the tubs. That's great. Doesn't need to go anywhere. Another version is, well, it goes to the processor instead. The processor then processes it, provides the recycled materials to Carrillo. Carrillo can then go and use it in their tubs. And then the final one is via a waste management company to the waste processor, and then finally to Carrillo. However, there's a big question mark for this, is how many of these tubs are we actually going to get back? So it sort of brings us on to one of the topics that we've also been looking at Cardiff Business School, is forecasting of returns. So you're closing the supply chain, basically. It's a closed loop supply chain. So there are some questions to ask. How much are we going to get back? When will it come back? And the nature of the question differs, whether it's reuse, remanufacturing, or recycling. Reuse, some of us will remember companies like radio rentals. You could hire or rent a television. You're tired with it, you want to upgrade at the end of a year. It goes back, they tidy it up, and then it goes out to another customer. That's one example of reuse. Another more challenging one is remanufacturing. If you're actually going to be remanufacturing things, they're potentially going back into your production line at some stage. So you may actually need to forecast when they're going to come back. How long is the lifespan on a project, on a product, that sort of thing. And that's actually quite a big challenge. We did an Astute project with Cooperative up in North Wales and found out it's quite a big challenge. It's not been addressed really by academia and industry. It's not really been looked at. So we ended up with a KTP. That ended up with an EPSRC funded project, the Rerun project, that involved companies like Bardar and DSV Panalpina and the likes. And actually, it's out of that project that the Remaker space at Cardiff University was born. But for Carrillo, we need to be looking at recycling. We need to look at the tubs that we're going to get back and just seeing what's going on in reality. So we're now getting towards the trial stage of the project, and we're going to be putting these tubs out into industry, tracking them using apps and the like, and seeing how many we get back, what state they're in, what route they take. And that's going to sort of inform us and inform the business on whether it's feasible, how feasible it is, what the pricing will need to be, etc. So that kind of summarizes the state that we're at with that project. And there are a few other things that we've looked at. And when you've got, nice circular economy routes, circular manufacturing, you need to actually look at sort of green logistics. How can logistics support resilient, sustainable cities, supporting remanufacturing and redistributed manufacturing? So we conducted an urban area steeple study, so looking at socio-cultural, technological, economic, ecological, political, legal, and ethical aspects of different logistic solutions for sort of urban areas, your Cardiff, Swansea, Bristol, places like that. So the three business models that we came up with is logistics cooperative, so using effectively like an Airbnb, Uber type model, but using cooperative business principles. So you don't have sort of a shareholder taking money from a company that's involved in this cooperative. The actual people involved in providing the last mile logistics are actually the owners of the cooperative. They run it, they invest the money back in. And these companies will be providing the last mile delivery. So where your Amazon Prime vans or eBay delivery vans are doing it, the logistics cooperative could do it and actually maybe more efficiently use the vans that are out there already and power it by green vehicles. Another one is the use of urban logistics consolidation networks, actually taking big trucks off of our roads and having just consolidation points where products arrive or packages arrive at a warehouse on the outskirts of Cardiff. They can be offloaded and they can be loaded onto greener forms of delivery transport. That could be electric bikes or small electric vans. And there are various trials going on around the world. So in France, we've got the Petite Vienne scheme using a network of delivery points, distribution points, and then they're all delivered to the door via green vehicles, via electric bikes with trailers attached. Then the third one is using public transports. We've got buses, trains. We'll have the Cardiff metro system in the next coming years, and actually using that system to transport packages, commercial goods from, say, Cardiff to Caerphilly or Cardiff to Newport instead of using the M4. And some companies are actually, some countries have actually done this. For example, Cargo Bus in Estonia uses the bus network for parcel deliveries. So there's all sorts of new solutions to the problems that we have with logistics. And I think we all know just how much deliveries went up during the pandemic, whether it's Amazon or eBay or DHL, UPS, maybe your local greengrocer is doing deliveries. So, it's a challenge. It adds pollution as it currently is, and it creates congestion. So maybe we need to look at sort of green solutions to that. And for more future research, we've, in the past couple of weeks, been funded to look at scalable circular supply chains for the built environment. And this is a multidisciplinary team from Cardiff and Newcastle universities. So business schools, engineering schools, architecture, computer science actually use blockchain technologies for tracking reusable materials within the construction sector to support architecture and the construction sector. And that's it basically. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you've got sort of any queries and the like, just drop me an email.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Your diagrams remind me of some work that Catherine Wheatman did, and she says that when supply chains become multidimensional, they implement new flows and formats, service networks, more touch points, recovery loops for product and materials. They are loopy instead of leaky, which I think is a really a great way of describing them. Very briefly, because I want to quickly move on to Marianna and time is short, but how do you get businesses to buy into circular supply chains? You talked about logistics cooperatives, logistic consolidation networks, and integrated logistics. What's the selling point, Anthony?
Sometimes it can be, if you can sell it as a cost saving, that's a good one. Also, there are more sort of arm twisting methods. Bristol is a good example of basically a consolidation centre where the planning permission for their big Cabot Circus shopping centre said no deliveries by HGVs to the shopping centre between whatever time periods. Everything's got to go to that consolidation centre, and it can go out, and it does go out on green vans. So you can use the planning system. A lot of it is, there's also corporate social responsibility. Companies actually want to be seen to be being green. Amazon are pushing their green vans a great deal, but they're going away from diesel-powered vans to actually electric-powered vans for doing their deliveries. So there's cost savings, there's government, local council inducements, and there's also companies want to do green stuff, want to be seen to be doing green activities.
Thank you very much, Anthony. We now move to our final presentation, and that's by Dr. Marianna Marchesi, who's had to wait quite a long while before she gets to make her presentation. Marianna is a lecturer in the area of design for sustainability of the built environment in the Welsh School of Architecture. Marianna's presentation will provide an overview of social innovations for a circular economy, aiming at promoting circular production and consumption practices among urban communities, groups of interest, businesses, and social enterprises. So, Marianna, over to you.
Thank you very much for this introduction and for this opportunity. So I will share my presentation shortly. Okay. So I would like to show you the results of my Marie Slowowski Individual Fellowship. It's an European funding project called CIWM, focused on social innovation for a circular economy. I would like to introduce this concept of social innovation because social innovation provide as a crucial complementary role with technical innovation in the implementation of a circular economy. And this research shows a new potential scenario for a systemic change towards circular economy through a social technical innovation. So the study focused on the fact that resource efficiency in city depend on consumption and production patterns that are strongly linked to citizen behavior. If you look at the diagram, it shows the ecological footprint of Cardiff. You can see that almost 70% of the footprint is due to a citizen food and drink consumption, mobility pattern, energy consumption, consumable use, and consumption. These data are also observed in other cities in the UK. So, looking at these results, we observe that resource use and efficiency is strongly linked to citizen lifestyle and production consumption pattern. This study focuses on what drives citizen practice to prioritize circular production and consumption strategies, like reducing, repairing, reusing, refurbishing. Why? Currently, circular economy is mainly focusing on technological innovation, with limited attention at citizen practice and their production and consumption pattern. Therefore, the study focused on this aspect, and by literature review, we found that people are more keen to change their social practice if they are involved in collective intervention with peers. These interventions are called social innovation. They are new products, service, processes, markets, platforms, and organizational forms that engage people in alternative social practice. And we found that this intervention are able to engage people in a more sustainable living. So we decided to focus on social innovation intervention that engage people in circular production and consumption practice, looking at intervention in the design, take, and next stage, as well as in the stage of consumption, use, and dispose of. We select and analyze 56 social innovation intervention in different urban systems, and we collect data looking at resource input and output, urban system implemented, looking at food system, product system, mobility system, and building system. The sector, informal, not for profit, public, or private, main problem address, production and consumption practice implemented at current state, the engagement strategy, obstacle, circular economy action implemented, a main impact area. We went through a variety of social innovation intervention, like community growing, bike sharing, Fab Lab, upcycling intervention like big reuse, digital platform, community energy, and so on. What we found through this case study analysis and comparison, we found that social innovation for a circular economy can be categorized in 3 main categories and 7 types of social innovation. We identified a group of social innovation that are focused on alternative social setting. We found innovation like do-it-yourself citizen, sharing citizen, strategic citizen. We identify another category of social innovation that focus on individual competence. In this category, we found the do-it-yourself citizen, like the Fab Lab, and the sensor citizen, like citizen science. Finally, we found a final category that focused on alternative material arrangement. In this category, we found the innovation, social innovation initiative called Zero Waste Citizen. They aim at zero waste, and utility-oriented citizen. They base their initiative on service. So looking at this overview, we outline a concept of circular community composed of different groups. You can see community, the initiative focus on alternative social setting, citizen, a group of citizens of interest that focus on individual competence, and alternative material arrangement. They are business and social enterprise. They all promote alternative production and consumption practice through circular solution combined with the growth principle to ensure well-being for all within planetary boundary. Specifically, we explore for each type the type of practice that they implement and benefit as well as challenge. So they do it together. Innovation, social innovation is promoted by community of place and or interest. They promote collaborative consumption and consumption in the building and food system. The sharing citizen are intervention promoted by group of interest that foster alternative consumption, sharing and exchange of product, building spaces, and mobility modes. The strategic citizens are short-term group that by co-creation rethink and reuse for a short term differently public land and urban space. The do-it-yourself citizen are initiatives that promote self-production and alternative consumption, specifically product life extension. The Samsung citizen are initiatives like citizen science that promote co-production of knowledge in the building, food, and mobility system. Finally, we have 2 social innovation types that are promoted mainly by non-profit group and business. One is focusing on alternative production of product and food for achieving zero waste. The last one is utility-oriented innovation. Is promoted by non-profit group and business that foster alternative consumption, mainly renting and letting of building space and product by services. We also observe common challenge. This initiative, lack of access to infrastructure and general support, lack of sustainable business model, initial economic support. They need building human capacity and skill, the lack of network for resource circularity, and especially we found that the lack of understanding of real impact. So they are difficult to show the potential benefit they provide to government or institution. Through this case analysis, we also map this social innovation intervention for circular economy in different systems: product, food, building, and mobility. We look at them understanding their role in the circular economy. For example, in this case, we focus on the product system, and we found intervention in the design stage, take, make, use, looking at letting, renting, reuse, upgrade, reusing, upcycle, and material recovery. So you looking at this diagram, you can see that this intervention can have a complementary role with institution, industry, and government for the implementation of the circular economy, since they are able to promote a change on production and consumption practice. Because of this potential role, we expand the Resolve framework, introducing a crucial strategy in social innovation: engage and empower. And we combine these strategies with circular economy action, identify social innovation opportunities. So in the case of Regenerate, we found the community gardening, growing, composting, urban farming. In the action of sharing, we found shared community initiative like co-housing or shared facility like carpooling. In the optimized strategy, we found self-built community, self-production facility, collective purchase group. In the loop strategy, we found initiative like Repair Cafe, platform and platform, reuse center and a platform, upcycling initiative. In the virtualized strategy, we found platform for reuse, knowledge production, networking, supply chain. And in this change, we found intervention that promote renewable source use like community energy, new business model like community bike. Future step of the research. We are developing a card game prototype to test playful practice to engage citizens in a collaborative discovery of scenario for a circular economy through social innovation. Moreover, we, based on the typology and challenge that we have identified, we are developing preliminary recommendation about support strategies and measures for policy making. So, through this study, we highlight the complementary role that social innovation can have in the implementation of a circular economy in combination with the technological innovation, as well as we can we see a potential of combining social innovation with technical innovation to promote a systemic change for a circular economy. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at my university email.
Thank you very much, Marianna, for that presentation. We have very little time left, I'm afraid, but I just briefly, if you could respond to how can we ensure that these circular interventions using technology are inclusive for all sectors of the community? You identified some challenges, but how we address one of those would be fine.
Yes, I found very interesting practice there are that mix social innovation and technical innovation. One in Germany and one in Singapore. They are able to combine technological innovation, like for example, the example in Singapore. We combine very advanced technological solution in urban farming with community involvement to promote a closed loop in food production and consumption. In this way, they have developed an offer that is very complex in some way, but is able to develop a full circle in which the technological innovation support food production in an innovative way, but at the same time, the social innovation side engage people in this initiative. So people work for growing things in this city. Singapore has not space for growing, and they have a fun place on the rooftop of the building, and they promote educational program and other, and also engage local farming in production.
Thank you very much, Marianna. If we could, I've got a couple of questions for the whole panel here to address. We haven't got a great deal of time, so if you could keep your responses brief, and although some of the questions are quite difficult, perhaps challenging would be a better way of saying it. I'm going to start off with you, Andy, simply because you haven't spoken for quite a while. So, and the question is this: how can we avoid the lure of the shiny gadget? Technology hype may cause organizations to expend money without properly assessing and vetting business models around their investments. Gwion did touch on this, to be quite honest, but my question to you, Andy, so how can we avoid the lure of the shiny gadget?
Okay, that's a tricky one, but I'll steer it towards something that I didn't actually mention in my presentation. There is a lot of focus now on trying to do technological things with, for example, plastic waste. So turning it into fuel or hydrogen and calling it recycling. It's a shiny thing because everybody apparently hates plastic and wants to do something with it. So there are these wonderful shiny technologies out there that are proposed to do certain things. But the problem there is if you turn plastic into a fuel, that's energy recovery and not recycling. It also releases large quantities of fossil fuel carbon dioxide. Yeah, so it's the wrong solution basically. Yet there is a huge amount of money being poured into proposals on this. So that would be my example of what appears to be shiny but isn't at all. Very dull, in fact. So maybe a bit controversial, but we have looked at these technologies for the last 20 years. And they're not that shiny.
Right, yes. Here's a man who's got a smartwatch and a phone, and I couldn't turn off either, by the way. So apologies to Gwion on that. So would there anyone else like to address that specific question? I have another one I can move on to. Yes, Bettina.
Yeah, I would say, do you know what? I think that, we do live in a world that is driven by people buying things. And I think a key to this is that, you can have the new phone, but what is that phone made of? So let's be sure that it's designed for recyclability, it's designed for longevity. This is a really huge key to reducing environmental impacts, but also that, at the end of its life, we can upgrade it, we can replace components, we can recover those materials, And a lot of that is driven by the product design and ensuring that there's good, Andy mentioned, good regulations and policies that encourage the manufacturers to design to enable the longevity of if not the product, then the materials to really drive the circular economy.
Yeah, it's a really good, Bettina, point that that a lot of speakers made. It starts at the design stage. It starts when you're thinking about these products. Another question, and perhaps I'm going to ask Marianna, Gwion, and Anthony to address this one. You might be relieved at Andy and Bettina, but the one big issue is that about regulation of all this. How can we ensure that we're protecting our citizens, ensuring markets are fair, and enforce regulations whilst allowing new technologies to develop? Anthony, Gwion, Marianna, would any of you like to address that specific question first? Anthony, thank you. Saved me. Saved by the bell.
Yeah, that's it. It did look a bit quiet. To be honest, I think it's getting the legislation right, that you can do it. You don't want it to be overbearing, but you've got to get it right. You've got to have that bit of give and take in legislation. That yes, you want to encourage greener technologies, reduce plastic usage, but consult with the public, consult with experts, and make sure you get the policy right. Don't just do something to grab a headline. Spend the time to make sure the policy is right. That's my feeling.
And Brian, maybe I
Brilliant.
can come in there as well. I think,
Yes.
from my perspective, it's got to be user friendly, doesn't it, and attractive to the customer and also to the manufacturer, because we're aware of things like standards such as BS 8001 for circular economy, for example. Should be seen, really, it's not a requirement, but potentially for businesses it's an advantage, isn't it? You can sell your product based on the fact that it does meet certain standards, and seeing it maybe rather than a stick, a carrot, if you know where I'm coming from, to make it
Yes.
an attractive proposition, that it's a better product for that reason.
Marianna, would you like to make a final comment on that?
Right. I think I agree with Anthony and Gwion. I think currently there are several ways to engage also citizens in consultation. I think having a citizen on board help also in building a right legislation and helping also people to apply it and in this way engage in a circular economy.
And we've got just literally 3 minutes left before I have to sum up. And my final question to the whole panel, very briefly. So what's the oldest bit of technology you have? Gwion, I'm going to start with you.
Oh gosh, I can see this one coming. You're going to love this. Believe it or not, I've got a strimmer. Would you call a strimmer a piece of technology? But I would. It's better than an old sickle, But this strimmer that I've got actually dates back to about 1985, and it was actually my grandfather's strimmer. And it's a two-stroke Kawasaki, and it works perfectly. No maintenance whatsoever. And what's interesting is, we've got a team of manufacturing advisors within the Smart Innovation Programme, and we often discuss, jokingly, things like value engineering. So bringing cost out of products. You could do a value engineering project on that strimmer, and you certainly wouldn't make the components as strong as was made back in 1985. But it's a good point, though, isn't it? It's been there, running well, and I think in that lifetime I've had 2 or 3 mowing machines. So certainly a product that was well made.
Excellent. Bettina, I'm sorry to rush you all, but time is not on our side. So Bettina, your oldest bit of technology.
I have a printer, which probably shows not the most sustainable thing, but I guess it shows how little I print. I've had that printer for 25 years and it's still going.
Brilliant. Andy, you're on mute.
I shouldn't be.
No, you are. You're okay now.
Okay. A Singer sewing machine that's about 70 to 80 years old, and which of course is used for repair, remanufacture in the home.
Brilliant. Anthony.
Mine is, I think it's a 1970s, maybe early 80s Nikon SLR camera.
All right. Yeah, good. Excellent. Marianna, finally. So your oldest bit of technology that is still operating.
Yes. In terms of technology for circular economy, I think I'm not prepared. Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. But what that question does is shows that not only do we have people prepared to talk about the circular economy, we have people who are hanging on to technology to ensure that it's used in the future. And on that note, I just need to thank the organisers for the invitation, our excellent speakers, all of whom have shown how here in Wales we're stepping up to the technical and ecological challenges of delivering a circular economy. One which will provide numerous economic, social, environmental and cultural benefits. And finally, you, the audience, for your attendance. Thank you and stay safe. Diolch.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Rewatch all of our sessions online. Thank you to our partners.